The story begins by describing the impressions of a special unit member named Joseph Smith, who was on duty at the time. However, several incidents traumatized him when he returned to his country. Joseph was diagnosed with a mental disorder. The doctors who treated him reported to the police when Joseph escaped from the hospital. Then, the scene moves to 1 year later. Joseph is now homeless with his girlfriend, Isabel. Not long after, 2 thugs came and extorted the homeless. Isabel, who saw the incident, asked Joseph to hide and not fight back. But Joseph ignored Isabel's words. When the thugs approached them, Joseph suddenly beat the thugs, then told Isabel to run away. Finally, Joseph beat the 2 thugs alone in a fairly weak condition. Joseph looked overwhelmed. Joseph then decided to run away. Joseph then entered an empty apartment to hide from the thugs' pursuit. After feeling safe enough, Joseph began to change his appearance. He shaved all his hair and even wore clothes belonging to the owner of the apartment so that the thugs could not recognize him. Joseph also made sure that the apartment was safe for him to live in. He started by checking the phone number, which was apparently inactive until October 1st. It was a long time before Joseph could find Isabel's whereabouts. After that, he searched the mail and found the credit card belonging to the owner of the apartment. Then he went to the ATM to withdraw the money. Then, the scene switches to a nun named Christina, who often distributes food to the homeless. At that time, Joseph accidentally came, apparently recognized by Christina, who happened to have taken care of Joseph when he was a member of the unit. Then Joseph said if he was looking for someone named Isabel. But Christina focused instead on the clothes Joseph was wearing because she thought Joseph was stealing or robbing someone. But Joseph did not answer any of Christina's questions. He just gave her some money and left. Christina, who was silent, could only accept the money. After she had finished serving all the homeless people, Christina returned to the church to report the incident to the church board. There, she explained that a former military member gave her £500. The church board asked Christina where he got the money. When Christina answered that she didn't know, the board could not report the money as income for the church. The money was then returned to Christina. Finally, Christina decided to use the money to buy tickets for a concert by her favorite ballerina. Then, the scene moves to Joseph's past, who was still in the army, where he was traumatized because, at that time, he and his troops were suddenly attacked in the tank they were carrying. All his colleagues were killed except Joseph, who was at the controls of the tank. Soon, Joseph woke up from his dream, but he could not escape the image of his time on duty. Joseph even hallucinated that there were spies and shadows of the man he was hanging in his apartment. Joseph used a stick that he fantasized about as a weapon to fight the spies. Because he was hallucinating badly enough, Joseph decided to wake up. He went back to nurse Christina for help. This time, Joseph asked Christina to give him antibiotics, but Christina replied that she could not give the drug freely. She then told Joseph to go to the hospital instead, but Joseph said that he could not go there because it turned out that Joseph had escaped from the military court and was now being sought by the defense minister. Feeling sorry for Joseph's weak condition, Christina finally took Joseph to the church. There, she gave antibiotics and some information related to Isabel. Hearing that, Joseph was happy. He then gave Christina an address to give to Isabel if she saw her. Joseph then returns to the apartment, where he decides to start looking for Isabel's whereabouts alone. While looking for her, he accidentally found a paper with Isabel's name on it. He also checked the number, and it turned out that Isabel had sent a message to Joseph. The message concerned her decision to become a rented woman in order to save money to buy a house for the 2 of them. Isabel said that she was currently fine and asked Joseph not to look for her whereabouts. After that, the next day, Joseph suddenly found guests knocking on his apartment door. Apparently, the 2 people were the agency of the owner of the apartment. Because he was worried about being known as an intruder, Joseph decided to change his name to Joey Jones and claim to be Damon's lover. When the 2 agencies heard this, they were shocked, but Joseph immediately closed the door to prevent them from suspecting him further. Unable to continue relying on Damon's credit card, Joseph decided to work at a Chinese restaurant. Day after day he worked, and he also trained to strengthen his body. One day, while he was working, he found a very noisy customer. Joseph, who was disturbed by this, asked them politely to leave the restaurant. At first, the people accepted, but when outside the restaurant, they yelled at Joseph and challenged him to a fight. Joseph said if they fought, then they would be late for the train. But they didn't seem to care. They immediately attacked Joseph. Fortunately, Joseph quickly blocked their attacks. After that, they started trying to beat Joseph one by one, but the great Joseph easily knocked them all out. The incident also impressed the restaurant owner with Joseph's ability. After the incident, Joseph was called by his boss. There, one of the restaurant guards said that Joseph looked like he could do the dirty work. Finally, his boss, interested in Joseph's muscular posture, gave Joseph a different job as a debt collector. Joseph began to collect debts from people who owed his boss. Joseph didn't even hesitate to beat them up and kill them. Because of his job, Joseph now has enough money to support himself. He even ordered a large number of pizzas to distribute to the homeless through Christina. Seeing the large order, she was surprised because she had never ordered it, but the driver said that someone named Joey Jones had paid for the order. Then, the scene moves to Joseph, who was shopping. While he was looking for items, he accidentally crossed paths with his ex-wife, Dawn. But there wasn't much conversation between them. Then, the scene moves to Christina, who was surprised when she sees a dress hanging in front of her house. She also knew who gave her the dress. Then Christina approached Joseph, who was preparing dinner. There, Joseph explained that he now worked for a Chinese boss who gave him a lot of money. Christina was happy to hear that, but his mood changed when Christina brought him some bad news. Christina explained that the police had come to her this morning to tell her that they had found the body of a woman floating in the river. She was sure that it was Isabel, so she approached Joseph to ask him to help the police identify the body. But Joseph cursed the police for being incompetent in carrying out their duties. After learning that Isabel was dead, Joseph began to be unable to control his emotions. He was disgusted and furious when he heard Isabel was dead. Christina then explained that the police said she died after serving her customer. Not wanting to see Joseph get emotional, Christina tried to calm him down. She said that the money Joseph gave her was not used much. Christina also returned the money from Joseph, but Joseph said he didn't need the money. Christina finally took back the money, and she began to advise Joseph. She wanted to see Joseph change and become a good man, so Christina left to avoid Joseph. Joseph immediately chased her while giving back the dress he had deliberately bought for Christina. At first, Christina refused because she was a nun who was prohibited from wearing such clothes. But Joseph replied that Christina could take it off if she was uncomfortable. Finally, Christina took the dress and left. Then, the scene switches to the two thugs who once chased Joseph. This time, Joseph was not afraid to face the two of them. When the two thugs finished extorting the homeless, they now faced Joseph. They both seemed to have forgotten Joseph's face. But when Joseph said that he was the man who beat them both up when he was with his girlfriend, then one of them started pointing a knife. But Joseph easily beat them both up. Joseph focused first on the big thug by beating him so severely that he collapsed helplessly. After that, Joseph interrogated the other thug. He asked about who killed Isabel. At first, the thug did not answer, but after Joseph threatened to kill him with a spoon, the thug wanted to answer. He said that Isabel was killed by her own customer. He couldn't say his name because they don't play with names, but he could give Joseph the man's description, which was that he was 30 years old and had a wound in his eye area. Getting this information, Joseph immediately left while handing out money to the homeless people who were watching the fight. The scene then moves to Christina, who suddenly receives a letter from her colleague. It turns out that the letter is an invitation for Christina to attend an exhibition. She opened the invitation, and a letter from Joseph appeared. Joseph wrote that he had information about the perpetrator who had killed Isabel. Finally, in the evening, Christina decided to wear the dress given by Joseph and attend the exhibition. She met with Joseph and then started talking about Isabel's murder. Joseph opened the conversation by asking Christina to tell the police that Isabel's killer was a 30-year-old man who had a wound in the face area. Christina remembered Joseph's words very well. Then, after Joseph had provided enough information, they began to spend the night together. The next day, Joseph returned to his job of collecting debts. At that time, Joseph approached a man and said that he was collecting the debt that the man had to Boss Choi. But apparently, the man did not want to give Joseph cash. He promised to give a check to Boss Choi, but Joseph insisted on asking for cash. Unable to use gentle means, Joseph finally played a little rough. He pressed the man's hand until it almost broke, then took the suitcase containing his money. Meanwhile, the man's sons could only be silent. watching Joseph. And when Joseph was about to leave the place, the man's son started to rebel. He took a gun and demanded that Joseph return the family's money. Joseph was silent, while their mother asked her son to remain silent and not fight back. The boy seemed to hesitate when he was about to shoot until finally, Joseph turned the situation around by shooting the arm of the boy. Then Joseph left casually. But apparently, the mission failed this time because the police quickly got a report about the theft and started looking for the whereabouts of Joseph, known as Jones. The police even approached Christina because they heard that Joseph was seen frequenting the food tenant. But Christina decided to lie to the police.
Of Joey Jones.
When they met again in the middle of the night, Christina told them that the police were looking for his whereabouts. But Joseph, who is quite an expert in the field of crime, doesn't care about that. He is still focused on finding Isabel. Then, the scene moves to Christina facing the church board. There, the church board was shocked when Christina announced her intention to volunteer in Africa. Then, the scene moves to Joseph, who is meeting his boss. He said that he wanted to meet the boss of his boss, who had a higher position. Joseph is finally met by a woman who is often referred to as Madame. Choi's boss, as an intermediary, translates every word Joseph says. Then Joseph began to say what he wanted. Joseph knew that Madame was a very influential person. She had a blacklist of everyone who made mistakes. Therefore, he wanted to find someone who had the characteristics of a 30-year-old man and had a wound in the eye area. Hearing that, Madame said that the man was wearing a very expensive suit, but she could help him on the condition that Joseph must serve her. Joseph also agreed to the deal that Madame made. Then, Madame gave him a task to bring a container containing women who were victims of illegal trafficking. After getting the information, Joseph began to approach a container that Joseph had to deliver. Then, the scene moves to a man who had previously hired Isabel's services. The man was seen hiring one of the women again. Once they were in the room, the man started asking if they had told her. The woman was confused when her customer asked such a question. But suddenly the man beat her up. Turned out that the man was the man who killed Isabel. While the woman was being tortured, a colleague who heard her screams started to find out who the man was. When she checked the man's jacket, she found that his man was Max Forrester. Meanwhile, Joseph, who has successfully delivered the container, gets information about the man he is looking for, namely a letter containing the name Max Forrester. Then, the scene moves to Christina, who gets a letter from Joseph. The letter contains an invitation to meet at his apartment. Finally, they met. But on the morning of October 1st, Damon, the owner of the apartment, came home. He eagerly opened his apartment, but when he opened the lock, he found that the double lock on the door was still closed. He then checked the door hole area and saw a woman sitting down. Damon immediately shouted at the woman, who turned out to be Christina, who was with Joseph. Hearing the scream, Joseph immediately pulled Christina and left Damon's apartment. In the evening, Joseph approached a house belonging to his ex-wife. Coincidentally, at that time, it was Joseph's daughter who opened the door. He introduced himself and then gave his daughter some gifts. When Dawn arrived, she saw a suitcase containing a lot of money. After that, Joseph went to an event that Max Forrester attended. Christina, meanwhile, was watching a concert featuring her favorite ballerinas. After observing Max for a while, Joseph began to approach him. He made small talk to Max, and when Max asked about Joseph's identity, Joseph began to push Max to the edge of the building, then said once in a while, "You should look down there." Joseph immediately dropped Max down the building. The guests who saw the incident were automatically hysterical, but Joseph immediately fired a gun to threaten them all. After that, Joseph went to the theater, but Joseph just fell asleep outside while waiting for the show to finish. When the show was over, Christina immediately found him. There, Joseph spent time together, talking about himself and trying to become a better man. The next day, Christina went to Africa. Shortly before she left, Joseph first gave a letter containing his photos. In the letter, Joseph tells Christina that he will disappear in the middle of the city after successfully eliminating the criminals. And the movie is over.